brush your teeth, check your phone, and grab a snack without ever really deciding to. And journalist Charles Duhigg says that's not an accident. It's a hidden loop running your brain. In The Power of Habit, he breaks down exactly how habits form, why they're so hard to kill, and how companies, coaches, and civil rights leaders have used that same loop to change millions of lives. By the end of this video, you'll understand the three-step pattern behind every habit you have, and exactly where to insert a change so it actually sticks. Charles Duhigg opens with a man named Eugene Pauly, who lost most of his memory after a brain infection, but could still walk his usual route home and make his own breakfast every day. That's because habits don't live in the thinking part of your brain. They get stored in a deep, primitive region that keeps running even when memory and reasoning break down. Duhigg explains that every habit follows the same three-step loop: a cue that triggers the behavior, a routine you perform, and a reward that tells your brain this pattern is worth repeating. Think of brushing your teeth. Seeing your toothbrush is the cue, brushing is the routine, and the minty clean feeling is the reward. Your brain does this because habits save mental energy. Once a behavior becomes automatic, your brain can go on autopilot, like Eugene walking the same path without needing to remember why. This is why habits are so hard to erase. The loop gets carved in almost permanently. So the goal isn't deleting a habit, it's replacing the routine in the middle. Once a habit forms, your brain starts craving the reward before you even begin the routine. And that craving is what makes cues so powerful. Duhigg tells the story of Pepsodent toothpaste, which became a bestseller in the 1920s, not because it cleaned teeth better, but because its inventor added a tingly, minty ingredient that gave people a distinct mouth feeling. So they started craving that tingle, and brushing became automatic. The advertisers basically created a craving for a sensation, then trained a whole country to link that sensation with clean teeth. The same principle explains why Febreze failed at first. Nobody craves a neutral, odorless room, so the product flopped until the company reformulated it with a strong, pleasant scent, giving people something to actually crave after cleaning. This shows a habit only sticks around if there's a craving attached to the reward. So anyone trying to build a new habit needs to find or create a craving that pulls them toward the behavior, not just hope willpower carries them through. Duhigg calls this the golden rule of habit change. You almost never delete a bad habit outright. Instead, you keep the same cue and the same reward, but you swap out the routine in between. Take football coach Tony Dungy. Instead of drilling his players with hundreds of complex plays, he trained them to recognize a handful of cues on the field and react instantly with one clean, practiced routine, turning hesitation into fast, instinctive habits that won championships. The same idea works for something like nail biting. The cue might be boredom, and the reward might be stimulation. So instead of just trying to stop, you replace biting with something else that gives you that same stimulating feeling, like squeezing a stress ball. But Duhigg is clear that swapping the routine only works long-term if you also believe change is possible, especially during hard moments, which is why belief, often reinforced through community or faith, is the glue that holds new habits together when life gets stressful. Not all habits are equal. Duhigg introduces Keystone Habits, single changes that ripple outward and reshape everything else around them. When Paul O'Neill took over the struggling aluminum company Alcoa, he shocked everyone by ignoring profits completely and obsessing only over worker safety, insisting on being told personally about every single injury. That one keystone habit forced managers to fix broken machinery, open up communication, and take responsibility across the whole company, and profits skyrocketed as a side effect. It's like exercise. People who start jogging regularly often find they eat better and sleep better too, even though nobody told them to. One good habit creates a domino effect into other areas of life. Duhigg also points to small wins, tiny early victories that build confidence and momentum, showing people that change is achievable, which then makes bigger transformations feel possible down the line. Duhigg then digs into willpower, and the big discovery is that willpower isn't a fixed trait. It behaves more like a muscle that gets tired the more you use it, which is why people give in to temptation more easily late in an exhausting day. Starbucks realized employees needed strong willpower to stay calm with rude customers. So instead of just telling workers to be patient, the company trained them to build simple if-then routines in advance, like planning exactly how they'd respond if a customer started yelling. This turned willpower into something practiced and automatic, like a habit itself, rather than something you had to summon from thin air in the heat of the moment. Duhigg also shows that strengthening willpower in one part of your life, like exercising regularly or sticking to a budget, tends to spill over and make you more disciplined in totally unrelated areas too. Almost like your whole willpower reserve gets built up through practice. Zooming out from individuals, Duhigg argues entire social movements follow a habit-like pattern too, using Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott as his central example. Rosa Parks wasn't some random stranger to the community. She was deeply connected. So when she was arrested, her close friends and peer groups felt personally compelled to act. And that's the spark that gets any movement started. But a movement doesn't grow huge just from close friends. It spreads further through what sociologists call weak ties, the acquaintances and neighbors of neighbors who pass the cause along, almost like a habit moving through a community's social fabric. Finally, Duhigg says movements only survive for the long haul once participants start seeing the cause as part of who they are, adopting new group habits and identities, like the disciplined nonviolent tactics protesters trained themselves to repeat, even under provocation. So a movement essentially becomes a supersized version of the habit loop. Cue, communal routine, and a shared reward of identity and belonging. Duhigg ends with a tricky question. If so much of our behavior runs on autopilot, are we still responsible for what we do? He walks through the unsettling case of a man who, while sleepwalking, killed his wife with no conscious awareness at all, and the courts had to grapple with whether a habit-driven, unconscious brain state removes moral responsibility. He contrasts that with a woman with a gambling addiction whose brain showed warning signals right before a big loss, signals that habit and craving learned to override, so she kept playing anyway, and courts treated her as fully responsible since she still had some awareness of the pattern. Duhigg's takeaway isn't that habits erase free will, but that once you understand a habit's specific cue, routine, and reward, you gain the power to notice it happening and consciously intervene. In other words, ignorance of your own habit loops feels like fate, but awareness turns that same loop into a choice you can actually make. The biggest idea in this book is simple. You can't just delete a bad habit, but if you keep the same cue and reward and swap in a new routine, you can rewrite almost any pattern in your life. Start small, find one keystone habit, and let it ripple outward into everything else. If this breakdown helped, subscribe for more book breakdowns that actually teach you something you can use.